Hi, I'm Raylene. My sister stood up at my wedding, microphone in hand, and called me a gold digger in front of 300 guests. My own mother toasted to it. They laughed like it was a punchline. But what they didn't know? My groom had a secret. Ever been publicly humiliated by the people who should protect you and stayed silent? Want to know what happened next? The chandeliers caught the last of the sunlight, refracting gold across a room full of people I didn't know if I trusted anymore. The vineyard glowed, every table trimmed in eucalyptus and cream linen. Everything looked like a dream. But I wasn't dreaming. Not when my dress clung too tight from nerves. Not when I caught my sister's eyes across the room, already narrowed behind a wine glass she hadn't let go of since cocktail hour. Something in her smile didn't match the toast she was about to give. People milled around the reception hall with the kind of buzz only champagne and expensive lighting could create. I stood near the head table, pretending to laugh when people made jokes, nodding too much, smiling too wide. Elijah's hand found mine, steady, solid. "It's almost over," he whispered. No, it hadn't even begun. Marla took the microphone with a grace that wasn't hers. She didn't stumble. She didn't tremble. She owned the room like she'd been planning this speech for years. "My sister," she began, voice sweet enough to rot fruit, "has always been the smart one, calculated, strategic." Soft laughter. She knew early on how to find what matters, success, status, and a man who could offer both. The laughter stiffened. I stopped breathing. She always said she'd marry someone with a portfolio before he even had a personality. And look at her now, married to a CEO. Let's toast to the smartest investment she's ever made. Some people chuckled. Others looked around, unsure if it was a joke. My mother raised her glass. "Congrats, gold digger." And there it was. The punchline. The room tilted, but my body stayed still. Frozen, not from shock, but recognition. I'd seen this moment coming. Just didn't know it would wear green silk and hold a mic. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I let it hit. For a second, no one moved. Then Elijah stood. He didn't say a word. Just walked toward the tech booth, quiet as a verdict. Pressed something. A video filled the screen behind us. It opened with a shot of me in Elijah's old office, whiteboard behind me, markers on the desk. I was mid-sentence, pitching strategy during a crisis. The company had been bleeding out. I was explaining how to stabilize the burn. The voiceover came next. Elijah's. She didn't ask to be named. She just fixed it. Cut to me leading meetings, restructuring teams, skipping holidays to rebuild a company I hadn't even planned to stay with. Another clip. Elijah again. She saved my business, my legacy, my family. Then the final slide. Without her, this company wouldn't be here, and neither would I. Silence washed over the room like a tide. Marla didn't laugh anymore. Her face tightened. My mother blinked fast, then looked away. I still didn't say anything. I didn't need to. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't theatrics. This was truth, finally louder than the lies. I picked up my champagne glass, raised it slowly, not toward Marla, not even toward Elijah, to myself. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. But inside, I was done pretending. It started long before the champagne, and I was done pretending it didn't. I wasn't hearing the applause. I wasn't watching the video anymore. My body stayed seated at that vineyard estate, but my mind had slipped, back to the first time I knew Marla was capable of this. This wasn't new. This wasn't even a surprise. She didn't just humiliate me tonight. She'd done it years ago, quietly, strategically, when I was too naive to recognize betrayal when it wore lip gloss and called itself Little Sister. 17 years ago. I was a sophomore at Rice. Marcus Hale was older, pre-med, ambitious, charming in the way boys are when they know they're being watched. We met at a debate tournament, bonded over sarcasm and coffee. He made me feel visible, valid. Marla was still in high school, 16 maybe. She was visiting campus that weekend, said she wanted to see what college felt like. I introduced them. One lunch, a tour, polite smiles. She laughed too hard at his jokes. I brushed it off. One night my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I played it on the way back from class. It was Marcus, except he wasn't talking to me. I wasn't supposed to hear that message. "Hey, baby, I can't wait to sneak off with you again. Ray doesn't have a clue. I nearly dropped the phone. That voicemail lived on my phone for 2 hours before I deleted it. I didn't scream. I didn't confront either of them. I drove home that weekend and told my mother. She sighed. Well, maybe you weren't attentive enough. Boys get bored when they're ignored, sweetie. Just like that, as if I'd left my keys behind, as if I had invited it. I didn't talk to Marcus again. Marla never apologized. She acted like nothing happened. I didn't react. But I changed. I started saying no. I stopped sharing. And I started watching her more closely. Years passed. I became a name in legal circles, articles, speaking panels, profiles. I never told anyone how much it terrified me, being seen again, now with more to lose. 3 years ago, I was nominated for the top 40 under 40 list by the Texas Bar Journal. It was one of those titles people like to say they don't care about until it's their name being stripped from it. A week after the shortlist went public, a tabloid ran an article with a photo. Me at a college party, barely 20. Red cup in hand, eyes glazed. But what stood out wasn't the image, it was the caption. Power lawyer or party princess? Sources say this isn't the first time Raylene Cruz leveraged charm over merit. The photo was cropped. I remembered the original. It was from a private Facebook album long deleted. Only a few people had access. Fewer had motive. Marla posted a story the next day. Family is complicated. Success doesn't always mean classy. She didn't tag me. She didn't have to. A former stylist I'd worked with on a brand collaboration quietly messaged me, said someone had reached out to her team asking for dirt. The email address? Registered to a PR assistant tied to Marla's influencer agency. The nomination was pulled. The press forgot, but I didn't. That was the day I stopped defending her in my own mind. Not out loud, not in public, just internally. Like closing a file. Because I realized then, Marla wasn't careless. She was calculated, and I couldn't afford to be surprised by her ever again. Back at the wedding reception, I stared into the shimmer of my untouched drink. She hadn't just taken Marcus. She hadn't just stolen a headline. She'd tried to take my name, my identity, my voice. But I was still here, still standing. She took my first love, and then tried to take my name. But I'm still standing. The photos from the wedding kept reappearing in my feed like a slow bruise that refused to fade. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I already knew what I looked like, sitting still while being shredded in front of people who had clapped at my downfall. What haunted me more wasn't the words. It was the stillness afterward. How no one stepped in. Not a single "that was too much." People don't need to boo to hurt you. Sometimes they just need to smile and stay quiet. As I scrolled through my phone in the dark, a notification flashed across the screen. Memory from last year. I clicked without thinking. A screenshot, my face, professionally framed in a crisp blazer, part of a feature in Texas Women in Law Rising Leaders. I'd forgotten I saved it. Or maybe I hadn't. Marla had reposted the article the day it went live. Not to celebrate, but to spin. Congrats to my big cis queen of contracts but still single AF # lonely lawyer. I'd blocked her story within minutes. Told myself it didn't matter. Told myself I was used to it. But it had mattered. Because it wasn't just a joke. It was branding. My accomplishments repackaged as punchlines. Some of her followers laughed. Others DM'd me with passive-aggressive comments. Your sister's hilarious. You must be fun at parties. I didn't respond. But I remembered. Some wounds don't bleed. They trend. A few days after, I checked the post again. Masochism disguised as curiosity. I saw it. My mother's comment. You'll find someone, honey. Just make sure he can handle your career first. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't protective either. It felt like someone patting your head while your house burned down. I remembered sitting in the living room, the dishwasher humming in the background, phone in hand. That line glowing on the screen like a neon sign. Make sure he can handle your career. Not your brilliance, not your heart. Just the part they considered threatening. I didn't reply. I just saved the screenshot. That night, I created a folder on my desktop, labeled it with a word I hadn't said aloud in years. Proof. Proof that I wasn't imagining it, that it wasn't paranoia, that it wasn't me being too sensitive. I didn't plan on using it, not then. but I was starting to remember out loud, because silence wasn't protecting me. It was giving them permission. She didn't need a microphone. She had a Wi-Fi connection and an audience. The silence after her toast hadn't ended. It just changed shape. Back in our apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, elbows resting against cool granite, scrolling through floral invoices I no longer cared about. Outside, the Austin skyline blinked like a warning light I had ignored for too long. It wasn't just what Marla had said that night. It was everything that came before. Each smile with sharp edges, every compliment wrapped in comparison. And most of all, my mother's ability to slice through me without raising her voice. She didn't scream. She smiled. And somehow that cut deeper. After Elijah proposed, Loretta had insisted we gather for brunch in Galveston. She booked the table, picked the restaurant, even chose my dress, saying soft pink looked less aggressive for engagement photos. We toasted with mimosas. I should have known. "Well, darling," she said, glass raised, voice honeyed, "you finally closed your biggest deal." Laughter rippled. Even the waiter cracked a grin. I glanced at Elijah. His shoulders stiffened. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She wasn't done. "You always did think like a lawyer. Efficient. Strategic." Someone murmured something about how lucky I was. Another joked, "She found a husband and a hedge fund." I didn't flinch. I was practiced by then. But that night, Elijah pulled me aside before bed. He didn't shout. He just said, "That felt like a boardroom pitch, not a blessing." And that stung more than I expected, because he was right. 16 years ago. I was in my final year of law school, exhausted, focused, single, and not even pretending to care about it. That's when my mother suggested I attend a dinner with a family friend, some CEO she described as well-connected and realistic. "He's not handsome, but he's stable," she said. "Love is a luxury. Security isn't." I went. I wore a blouse I hated and practiced smiling in the Uber. The man was 27 years older than me, called me sharp for a woman, asked if I planned on working after marriage. I nodded through dessert, then deleted every dating app on my phone the moment I got home. That night, I promised myself I'd never be set up again, and I never told Elijah, because I already knew how it sounded when the people who should protect you packaged you instead. Now, sitting in my apartment, my phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. "Need anything for the reception? I can ask my friend for vendor deals." I stared at the screen. "Not anymore." I typed back, "No need, we've got it covered." She replied in seconds, "You sure? I just want it to be perfect." Perfect for who? I didn't answer. I was done letting her decorate my boundaries like centerpieces at a party she refused to leave. She raised me to make deals. I chose to build boundaries, and deep down, I knew she wouldn't like that, which meant the next move wouldn't be sweet. She wore pearls, but every word from her was a leash. The dress was perfect. Not flashy, no beads, no forced fairy tale, just satin and structure, modern lines with just enough softness to feel like me. When I stepped out of the fitting room, the stylist clasped her hands and said, "That's it, that's you." For a moment, I believed it. Then my mother walked in, late of course, with a phone in one hand and a coffee she didn't need in the other. She gave me a once-over like she was inspecting a countertop for dust. "That's what you're wearing?" Her voice cut through the quiet hum of the studio. "For his family?" I blinked. "It's elegant," I said, still facing the mirror. "Simple. Timeless." "Simple is right," she murmured. "Sweetheart, this isn't a courthouse elopement. You're marrying into money. People expect a show." I turned to her. "It's not a performance." Loretta laughed softly, like I'd just told a child's joke. She started scrolling through her phone, holding up photos of backless gowns, glittery fabrics that looked like disco balls. "This would light up the room," she said, zooming in on one with a plunging neckline. The stylist looked at me. I shook my head. "Mom," I said firmly, "this is the dress." She didn't argue. She just gave me that look, the one that said she wasn't finished, the one she wore right before she rearranged everything behind closed doors. That night I got a text. "I've got something better lined up, trust me." I didn't reply. A week later, I showed up for my final fitting. My stylist wasn't there. A new woman greeted me with a clipboard and a fake smile. Hi, Raylene. I'm Eden. Your mom booked me for a quick redesign. My stomach dropped. Redesign? She motioned me to the fitting area. The dress hanging in the back wasn't mine. It sparkled under the light, rhinestones everywhere. It looked like something a reality TV bride would wear to a second divorce. I think your mom wanted more drama for the photos, Eden said carefully, as if trying to soothe a wild animal. I didn't say a word. I walked into the fitting room, closed the door, and sat on the bench for 10 minutes. I stared at the hem of a dress that didn't belong to me. She didn't just change the dress, she tried to change me. When I left the studio, I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I drove. One hand on the wheel, one thought in my head. Enough. Back in Austin, I picked up the phone. Don't touch my wedding again, I said when she answered. Loretta chuckled. Oh, honey, you're overreacting. No, I said, quieter but sharper. I'm reacting. For once. A pause. Suit yourself, she muttered. But don't blame me if people think you look underwhelming. I hung up. No threats, no dramatics. Just a closed door she wouldn't walk through again. If she wanted a doll to parade, she should have raised someone else. The invoice came through late. I was halfway through my third cup of coffee when it landed in my inbox, flagged as urgent. Do you want the receipt under your name or your mom's? The florist asked. My mom's? That didn't make sense. I'd paid for everything myself, except the one wire Elijah had insisted on sending directly to my mother. It'll be easier, he said. Let her handle some of the deposits. So I dug. Buried in the transaction history was a wire transfer. $18,000 sent from Elijah's business account to Loretta Cruz. 3 weeks ago. I closed the screen. My pulse slowed, not because I was calm, but because I wasn't even shocked. Funny how generous people get when it's not their money. That evening, I waited until Elijah finished showering. He stepped out, towel slung over his shoulder, humming something off-key. Did you wire my mom money? He blinked. Yeah. You said she needed to cover a few deposits. I shook my head. I said she offered to help. I never told her to request a transfer. She texted me, said it would keep things moving faster. Of course she did. Loretta hadn't mentioned it once. No thank you, no update, no receipt. She'd just pocketed nearly 20 grand like she was entitled to it. The next morning I drove to Galveston. I told her I needed to drop off centerpieces. It was a lie. I just wanted to see her face. She was in the kitchen, stirring coffee with a gold spoon like always. Marla breezed through behind her, chatting on speakerphone, perfume trailing in the air like a second presence. I didn't waste time. Did you think I wouldn't notice 18 grand disappearing? Loretta looked up, sipped her coffee. It was for the wedding. You said not to stress over the details. I stared at her. That wasn't your decision to make. You're too close to it, Ray. You've always been too controlling. No apology, no guilt, just the same old script. But the scene shifted when Marla reappeared, swinging an Hermes bag over her shoulder. Not just any Hermes. New, limited edition, and expensive. She twirled once in front of the hallway mirror. Mom said I deserved to look like the maid of honor, not her maid, she giggled into the phone. The words didn't just land. They split something open. The money hadn't gone to florists or seating charts. It had gone to clothe the woman who had spent the last year trying to strip me bare. Loretta had lied, and Marla had worn the lie like a trophy. She used my fiancé's money to dress up the woman who'd tried to ruin my name. On the drive back to Austin, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned. That night, I renamed my wedding planning folder. If I have to burn this down. I started collecting screenshots, emails, text confirmations, payment logs. I wasn't just getting married anymore. I was preparing for war. She didn't just take money. She rewrote the guest list of who deserved to be celebrated. I couldn't sleep. It was past 1 a.m., and the hum of the fridge was louder than my thoughts. Barely. I tiptoed out of bed, careful not to wake Elijah, and wandered into the home office to grab my charger. That's all I was looking for. But his phone was sitting there, unlocked, screen lit, a message thread open. I didn't go looking for anything. That's the truth I'll hold on to. But sometimes betrayal doesn't wait for permission. Sometimes it just sits there, glowing. The last message read, "If she ever changes her mind, you know where to find me." Sent from Marla, dated 3 weeks after our engagement. I froze. My body did this awful thing, numb and burning all at once. I scrolled up. Nothing from Elijah. No reply. But no deletion either. He'd seen it. He'd read it, and he'd said nothing. I backed away from the desk like it might explode. My breath shortened. I sat in the hallway, back against the wall, staring at the crown molding, waiting for the adrenaline to subside. I was ready to marry him. She was ready to replace me. And he kept it to himself. I didn't wake him. I didn't throw anything. I didn't storm out. I just sat there until morning. When he walked into the kitchen, his hair still damp, coffee half poured, I finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell me about the message from Marla?" His hand paused over the coffee pot. What? "You read it. You didn't respond, but you saw it." Elijah set the mug down. "I didn't want to ruin things. I thought you'd get upset." I nodded. "You were right. I'm upset." He stepped closer. "Raylene, it's not your job to manage what I can handle," I said, voice flat. I didn't raise it. I didn't cry. But something shifted. A sliver of space wedged itself between us, not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't. Later that day, I pulled out my laptop, opened the folder marked "If I Have to Burn This Down," created a new subfolder. I named it Unfiltered. I copied the screenshots, labeled them, added a timestamp. Then I opened my wedding notebook and wrote a new line underneath the checklist. This isn't paranoia. This is proof. Because I knew what Marla was doing. She didn't want Elijah. She wanted proximity. To remind me that even here, even now, she could still get close enough to rattle the foundation. She didn't want him. She wanted to know she still could. The email was polite, professional, crisp. It arrived at 9:04 a.m., right between 2 client calls and just before my assistant stepped in to ask about rehearsal dinner menus. "We regret to inform you that your nomination for Attorney of the Year has been withdrawn pending internal review of a conflict of interest concern, submitted anonymously." No signature, no phone call, just gone. They didn't ask for my side. They just erased me. I stared at the screen, rereading the words until the lines blurred. The coffee on my desk grew cold. I didn't touch it. The nomination wasn't just an honor. It was a statement, a rebuttal to every time I'd been called a pretty face in litigation, or the one who got lucky with a rich fiancé. And now? One click, and I was back to defending myself against ghosts with passwords and VPNs. Elijah knocked softly, sensing something. "They dropped it," I said without looking up. He moved beside me. "Let me fix this. I'll call the board. I'll explain everything." I shook my head. "That's the problem. You're not the one they're questioning. I am." He paused, hands clenched. "Ray, they know you." "No," I said quietly. "They know what they want to see." The screen refreshed. The updated press release no longer mentioned me. My name had vanished without a trace. First they called me a gold digger. Now they were calling me a fraud. I didn't cry. I just opened a clean file. No name yet. Just blank. White. Cold. Then I called Cooper. "I need your help," I said. "Technical. Tracking metadata." We found it within hours. A fake account submitted the complaint, masked IP address, but the VPN pinged from Houston. The recovery email, when unmasked, was tied to Marla's PR assistant. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly on brand. She didn't just want to win. She wanted me to lose, in public. I compiled the screenshots, every message, every confirmation, the account, the metadata trail, the statement from the assistant that, yes, Marla asked me to handle a form for her. I renamed the file, finalstraw.pdf, and I didn't cry. Again. Instead, I printed 3 copies. One for the board, one for legal backup, and one just for me. I booked a brunch table at the same restaurant where Loretta toasted Elijah's money and called it my greatest deal. I booked it in both our names, mine first. She wants a spotlight? Fine, let's give her one. This wasn't a feud anymore. This was war, and I was finally done fighting fair. Marla stood under the spotlight like she was born for it. The mic shimmered in her hand, and her voice rang with sugary certainty. "I'm so happy for my sister," she began, smiling. "She's always had great instincts, especially when it comes to, let's say, profitable decisions." The crowd stirred. She didn't stop. From the day she met Elijah, I knew she wasn't just in love, she was making her smartest investment yet. Laughter, nervous, scattered. Loretta raised her glass. Congrats, gold digger. They knew it was a lie. That was what cut deepest. She didn't forget the truth. She chose to bury it beneath applause. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just watched. And Elijah stood. He walked slowly toward the AV booth. Calm, steady, not a single word. He didn't need them. The lights dimmed. The screen behind us flickered on. My voice, my handwriting on a whiteboard, clips of me leading meetings, sketching out the crisis turnaround for Elijah's fintech company, slides of projected revenue curves, employee retention metrics, strategy decks I built from scratch. I had recorded those clips months ago, part of an internal review presentation. Never meant to be public, but Elijah had saved them. The last clip, him on camera. She didn't just help the company survive, he said, his voice low but certain. She gave it meaning, and she gave me perspective. You don't marry a woman like this for money. You fight like hell to be worthy of her. Silence. A moment stretched long and taut like a held breath. Then, applause. Small at first, then stronger. Loretta turned her face. Marla didn't wait. She left the stage without a word, heels clicking like punctuation down the aisle. Loretta hesitated, one last glance at me, then followed. Across the room, Cooper caught my eye and nodded. His look didn't say congrats, it said finally. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The silence they left behind was louder than any apology they could offer. Elijah came to my side. His hand brushed mine. We danced, slowly. Not like celebration, like confirmation. People circled us, some whispering, some still stunned. That was powerful, someone said nearby. I leaned in close and whispered. It wasn't revenge. It was the truth. The candles around the room flickered low. One by one, the flames bowed out. I looked down at my dress, the one I chose, not the one they tried to make me wear. The wounds weren't gone, but they had been seen, and that was enough for now. Sometimes you don't need them to say sorry. You just need them to leave. Maybe this story wasn't just about a wedding. Maybe it was about the weight we carry when silence becomes a habit, about what it costs to keep the peace at the expense of your own worth. I learned, too late, but just in time, that family doesn't get to define your value. And love, real love shows up for you, even when you're too tired to stand. To anyone watching this who has ever been called too much, too ambitious, too difficult, don't shrink. Your light doesn't dim because someone else refuses to see it. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Have you ever stayed silent just to survive a room? I'd love to know your story. If this video reached your heart, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate, tell me why. Let's have that conversation. And hey, if you want more stories that challenge, heal, and reveal, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps bring these voices forward. We don't heal by hiding. We heal by telling the truth, even if our voice shakes.